What if the kindest, most selfless, most giving person in your life is actually the most terrified? What if every single time they said yes, smiled through pain, apologized for things that weren't their fault, and shrunk themselves to fit into someone else's comfort? What if that wasn't love at all? What if that was survival? What if people-pleasing is not a personality trait but a trauma response, a wound so deep that the person wearing it doesn't even know they are bleeding? And what if I told you that the very habit you think is making people love you is actually the exact thing destroying every real relationship you have ever had? Because here's the truth nobody told you. When you erase yourself to keep the peace, you don't keep the peace, you lose yourself piece by piece. And the most terrifying part, you do it with a smile. So if you have ever felt exhausted by being needed, drained by being the strong one, or completely invisible inside a room full of people who claim to love you, stay right here. Because what you are about to hear might be the most honest conversation you have had with yourself in years. This is not a speech about being better for others. This is a speech about finally being honest with yourself. So take a breath and let's begin. What if the most dangerous thing you have ever done in your life had nothing to do with risk, adventure, or recklessness? What if the most dangerous thing you have ever done was simply trying too hard to make everyone around you comfortable while slowly, quietly, painfully, you disappeared? I want to talk to you today about something that lives in the quiet corners of our lives. Something that wears the costume of kindness, wraps itself in the language of love, and presents itself to the world as generosity. But underneath that costume, underneath that beautifully constructed performance, there is fear, raw, trembling, exhausting fear. And that fear has a name. It is called people-pleasing. And today we are going to tell the truth about it. The whole truth. The kind nobody ever sits you down and tells you. Let me ask you something deeply personal. When was the last time someone asked you how you were doing and you answered honestly? Not I'm fine, not just busy, not that rehearsed, polished, socially acceptable version of yourself that you hand to the world like a business card. When was the last time you actually told the truth about how you were feeling? If you had to think about that for more than 3 seconds, then this speech is for you. Here is what research and lived human experience tell us over and over again. People-pleasing is not a character strength. It is not a virtue. It is not even close to kindness. It is fear wearing the mask of kindness. It is the fear of being rejected, the fear of being seen as difficult, the fear of being too much or not enough, the fear of conflict, the fear of abandonment. And when fear is driving every single one of your decisions, every yes, every smile, every swallowed opinion, every apology you didn't owe, you are not living your life. You are performing it, and that performance, it is exhausting. Think about the last time you said yes to something, and the moment that word left your mouth, every cell in your body screamed no. You agreed to work late again. You took on someone else's emotional burden again. You sat through a dinner you didn't want to attend. You laughed at something that wasn't funny. You bit your tongue so hard it nearly bled. And afterward, you went home, crawled into bed, and felt this hollow, heavy emptiness, this feeling of having been present everywhere except inside yourself. That is not generosity. That is self-abandonment. And we have been calling it love for far too long. The research is clear and it is brutal. When human beings operate consistently from a place of seeking external approval, the brain actually begins to rewire itself to prioritize other people's emotional states over its own. You become a master reader of other people's moods, body language, and unspoken needs, not because you are empathetic, but because you are afraid. You have trained yourself to scan every room for signs of disapproval. You have become so skilled at emotional caretaking for others that you have completely forgotten how to do it for yourself. And over time, this does not just drain your energy, it destroys your identity. Because here is the devastating truth. You cannot pour endlessly from an empty vessel, and you cannot know who you are if you have spent your entire life being whoever everyone else needed you to be. I want to talk about shame for a moment, because shame and people-pleasing are not distant cousins. They are deeply, painfully, inseparably connected. Shame is that voice, sometimes loud, sometimes a whisper, that says, you are not enough. Not what you did, not what you said, you, as a person, as a human being. Shame tells us that if people really knew us, our failures, our contradictions, our mess, our darkness, our ordinariness, they would leave. They would stop loving us. They would choose someone better. And people pleasers build their entire lives around making sure nobody ever gets close enough to find out the truth. Every favor, every sacrifice, every overextended yes is a transaction, a deal made with the universe that says, look how much I give, look how much I do. Surely that means I deserve to stay. Surely that means I am worthy of love. But here is the shattering reality. You cannot earn your way to worthiness. You cannot perform your way into belonging. Because love that is contingent on your performance is not love. It is a contract, and you deserve so much more than a contract. Let us talk about boundaries, because nothing in the world of human psychology is more misunderstood, more feared, or more desperately needed than boundaries. People pleasers hear the word boundary and they flinch. They have been taught, sometimes explicitly, sometimes through years of painful conditioning, that setting limits makes you selfish, that saying no makes you unkind, that prioritizing yourself means you do not care about others. This is one of the most damaging lies our culture has ever told. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishment. They are not declarations of war. Boundaries are the most honest, most loving, most courageous thing you can offer to another human being. Because when you tell someone the truth about what you can and cannot give, you are treating them like an adult. You are saying, I respect you enough to be honest with you. And you are saying to yourself, I respect me enough to protect my own spirit. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you are teaching people a lie. You are teaching them that this exhausted, overextended, boundaryless version of you is sustainable. And when you finally break, and people pleasers always eventually break, everyone is shocked because they never saw it coming, because you never let them. And I want to say something here that might feel uncomfortable. Some of the relationships in your life are only working because you are abandoning yourself to maintain them. Some of the harmony you are so proud of keeping is not harmony at all. It is silence. It is suppression. It is the daily, systematic erasure of your own needs, opinions, and truth. And a relationship built on your silence is not a relationship. It is a performance. And you are the only one who knows it. Here is what wholehearted living actually looks like. And it is not pretty, and it is not easy, and it is absolutely undeniably worth it. It looks like having conversations that terrify you. It looks like saying, I am not okay to someone who expects you to always be fine. It looks like disagreeing in a room where agreement is expected. It looks like taking up space unapologetically, fully, completely, even when every voice inside you says to shrink. It looks like choosing your truth over someone else's comfort. Not every day, not perfectly, but consistently, bravely, one honest moment at a time. Vulnerability, real vulnerability, is the birthplace of connection. Not the Instagram-worthy kind of vulnerability. Not the carefully curated confession that still keeps you in control of how you are perceived. Real vulnerability is showing up without armor. It is saying, I was wrong without a but. It is saying, I need help without immediately offering to help in return. It is loving people without the guarantee that they will love you back the same way. And it is terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. And it is the only way to experience genuine human connection. Because here's what the people-pleasing habit cost you that nobody ever talks about. It costs you your relationships, not by making people leave, but by making sure nobody ever really arrives. When you are always performing, always managing, always crafting the version of yourself most likely to be accepted, you never let anyone love the real you. And deep down, you know it. Deep down, that hollow feeling after every social interaction, that exhaustion after every conversation, that sense of being surrounded by people and yet completely alone, that is the cost. That is the tax people-pleasing charges on your soul. The bravest, most revolutionary act you can commit in a world that profits from your self-doubt is to decide that you are enough. Not when you lose the weight, not when you get the job, not when you fix the relationship, not when you become more patient, more productive, more polished. Right now, in this messy, unfinished, imperfect, wonderfully complicated version of yourself that is standing here today, you are enough. You have always been enough. And belonging, real belonging, does not require you to change who you are. It requires you to show up as who you are, fully, fiercely, without apology. So here is the invitation, and it is a terrifying one. The next time you feel that familiar pull to say yes when you mean no, to apologize when you are not wrong, to make yourself small so someone else can feel comfortable, pause, just pause, and ask yourself one question: am I doing this from love or from fear? Because love gives freely and feels expansive. Fear gives grudgingly and feels like chains. And when the answer is fear, and sometimes it will be fear, choose differently, not perfectly, not all at once, but choose differently, choose yourself, choose your truth, choose the terrifying, exhilarating, deeply human act of being honest about who you are and what you need. Because the world does not need more people who are endlessly agreeable. The world needs people who are genuinely, courageously, authentically themselves. People who have done the hard, messy, uncomfortable work of knowing who they are and then showing up that way every day in every room with every person. That is not selfishness. That is leadership. That is love. That is the most generous gift you will ever give to the world around you, the real, unfiltered, unperformed, unapologetic truth of who you are. We began today by asking, what if the most dangerous thing you have ever done was disappear? And now as we close, I want you to sit with a different question. What if the most powerful thing you could ever do is come back? Come back to yourself, come back to your truth, come back to the beautiful, complicated, worthy person you have been abandoning in the name of everyone else's comfort. People-pleasing will promise you safety. It will promise you love. It will promise you belonging, but it delivers loneliness dressed in applause. It delivers exhaustion dressed in purpose. And it delivers a life that looks full from the outside and feels completely empty from within. You were not born to be palatable. You were not born to be convenient. You were born to be real. And real is not always comfortable. Real is not always pretty. But real is the only thing that lasts. Real is the only thing that connects. And real, your real, is worth fighting for. So fight for it. Not with anger, not with walls, but with honesty, with boundaries, with the quiet, radical, daily courage of being exactly who you are. That is the truth about people-pleasing nobody tells you. And now you know it.